Imagine a civilization that ruled over 60 million people, spanned 3 continents, and lasted over 1,000 years. This is the story of how Rome rose from a small village to a global superpower, and how it all came crashing down. Welcome to the epic rise and fall of the Roman Empire. The origin of Rome is steeped in both myth and mystery. According to legend, the city was founded by twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, sons of Mars, the god of war. Abandoned at birth and suckled by a she-wolf, they grew up strong and wild. One day, after a bitter dispute, Romulus killed his brother and named the new city after himself, Rome, but that's just the legend. Historians believe Rome began as a small cluster of settlements around the Tiber River, sometime in the 8th century BCE. These early communities were likely Latin tribes, simple farmers and shepherds, living in mud huts on the Palatine Hill. Over the next 2 centuries, these tribes united under Etruscan influence, a more advanced civilization to the north. The Etruscans brought engineering, architecture, and even political organization, including the idea of kingship. Rome became a kingdom, ruled by a series of 7 kings, some mythical, some possibly real. Among them, Tarquinius Priscus built Rome's first sewer system, the Cloaca Maxima, and the Circus Maximus, a giant chariot racing stadium. But the monarchy ended in violence. The last king, Tarquinius Superbus, became a tyrant. After his son assaulted a noblewoman named Lucretia, the outraged Romans rose in revolt. In 509 BCE, they overthrew the monarchy and founded the Roman Republic, a government not ruled by kings, but by elected officials and a senate. It was a radical experiment in governance that would shape the future of the West. From a shepherd's village to a rebellious republic, Rome was just getting started. When the Roman kingdom collapsed in 509 BCE, the Romans vowed never to be ruled by a king again. In its place, they established the Roman Republic, a bold experiment in governance that would shape the political systems of the modern world. The Republic was built on a system of checks and balances. 2 consuls, elected annually, shared executive power. The Senate, a council of elders mostly from noble families, held significant influence over foreign policy and finances. Meanwhile, citizen assemblies allowed commoners, the plebeians, to vote on laws and elect tribunes who could veto Senate decisions, but the early republic was far from equal. The patricians, Rome's aristocratic class, controlled most of the power, while plebeians struggled for representation. This inequality sparked a series of conflicts known as the struggle of the orders. Over time, plebeians won crucial rights, including the right to hold political office and codification of laws in the 12 Tables. As Rome stabilized internally, it turned outward. Through military campaigns and strategic alliances, it gradually brought neighboring Latin tribes under its control. By the early 4th century BCE, Rome had become the dominant power in central Italy, but it wasn't all diplomacy and glory. The Gallic sack of Rome in 390 BCE, where invading tribes burned the city, was a brutal wake-up call. Yet rather than crumble, Rome rebuilt stronger, with a renewed focus on military organization and infrastructure. The Republic began constructing a vast network of roads, facilitating troop movement and trade. By 264 BCE, Rome had not only secured most of the Italian peninsula but had also laid the foundation for a Mediterranean empire. The next challenge: Carthage, and the Punic Wars that would define the next century. Rome was no longer a fragile city-state. It was now a republic with ambition, structure, and unshakable resilience, one step closer to empire. By 264 BCE, Rome had become a dominant power in Italy. But the Republic was just getting started. Over the next 2 centuries, Rome would expand its influence across the Mediterranean, but this rise came with a heavy price: relentless wars, social unrest, and the death of the Republic itself. Rome's first true rival was Carthage, a wealthy maritime empire based in North Africa. The two clashed in the Punic Wars, a trilogy of brutal conflicts that would test Rome's endurance. The most famous of these was the Second Punic War, where the Carthaginian general Hannibal led elephants across the Alps to strike Italy from the north. Despite early defeats, Rome adapted. Its resilience paid off when General Scipio Africanus defeated Hannibal at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. Securing Rome's dominance in the western Mediterranean, with Carthage weakened, Rome turned its attention eastward. Through a series of campaigns, it defeated the Hellenistic kingdoms of Macedonia, Greece, and eventually Egypt. By the end of the 1st century BCE, Rome ruled from Spain to Syria, from Britain to North Africa, but this vast empire came with problems. The wealth of conquest flowed to the elite, while common soldiers returned to Rome poor and landless. The gap between rich and poor widened. Corruption ran rampant. Tensions erupted in violence. The first cracks appeared with the rise of the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, who tried to redistribute land to the poor. Both were assassinated, a shocking sign that violence was becoming a political tool. Then came the generals. Men like Marius, Sulla, Pompey, and Julius Caesar used their armies to seize power, breaking centuries of republican tradition. Civil wars erupted again and again. In 49 BCE, Caesar crossed the Rubicon, a symbolic act of rebellion, and plunged Rome into yet another war. Caesar emerged victorious, declared himself dictator for life, and implemented sweeping reforms. But in 44 BCE, he was assassinated by senators who feared he aimed to be king. This did not save the republic, it doomed it. A final civil war broke out between Caesar's heir, Octavian, and his rival, Mark Antony. The war ended at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE. Octavian returned to Rome as its unchallenged ruler. In 27 BCE, he accepted the title Augustus. The republic was no more. An empire had risen from its ashes. After decades of bloody civil war, Rome finally found peace under one man, Augustus, born as Gaius Octavius. He was the adopted heir of Julius Caesar, and in 27 BCE, the Senate granted him the title Augustus, meaning the revered one. It marked the official transition from republic to empire, but Augustus was careful. He didn't crown himself king. Instead, he called himself princeps, or first citizen, maintaining the illusion of a functioning republic. But make no mistake, Augustus held ultimate power, and Rome would never return to its old ways. Under Augustus, the empire entered a golden age known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For over 200 years, Rome would experience relative stability, prosperity, and cultural flourishing. Roads were built. Trade flourished across Africa, Asia, and Europe. Roman law unified vast territories under one system. Augustus reformed the military, securing Rome's borders while avoiding unnecessary wars. He created a professional army loyal not to generals, but to the state. He also established the Praetorian Guard, a personal force to protect the emperor. Culturally, the era thrived. Writers like Virgil composed the Aeneid, a national epic that connected Rome's destiny to the gods. Ovid wrote love poetry. Horace captured the spirit of the times. Architecture soared. The Arapaces, or altar of peace, celebrated the harmony Augustus claimed to bring. But this peace came at a cost. The Senate became a ceremonial body. Elections were meaningless. Dissent was silenced. Augustus controlled the military, the treasury, and religion. Rome had traded liberty for order. Still, most Romans didn't mind. After years of chaos, Augustus gave them peace. He ruled for 41 years, and when he died in 14 CE, the empire mourned. He was deified as a god, and his image became a symbol of Roman greatness. Yet, even in this golden age, seeds of future decline were quietly planted. The question lingered: what would happen after Augustus? After the death of Augustus in 14 CE, the Roman Empire passed into the hands of his stepson, Tiberius, beginning the rule of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. While Augustus had been wise and cautious, his successors would take Rome down a darker path. Tiberius was a capable general, but a reluctant and paranoid ruler. He withdrew from public life, leaving much of the empire in the hands of the corrupt Praetorian Guard. His reign ended in secrecy and suspicion, and then came Caligula. Caligula began as a popular ruler, charming and generous. But within months, he fell ill, and returned seemingly mad. He declared himself a god, appointed his horse as a priest, and held lavish, cruel spectacles. Under Caligula, the palace became a stage for perversion and terror. After 4 years of chaos, Caligula was assassinated by his own guards. Power then fell to Claudius, his uncle, a stuttering, limping scholar whom no one had expected to rule. Surprisingly, Claudius was competent. He expanded the empire into Britain and reformed the bureaucracy. But his personal life was riddled with manipulation and betrayal. His final wife, Agrippina the Younger, poisoned him to place her son, Nero, on the throne. Nero was just 16 years old. At first, Nero was guided by wise advisors. But as he grew older, his darker nature emerged. He murdered his mother, his wife, and any senator who opposed him. He fancied himself an artist and performer, more than a ruler. He sang and acted on stage, something scandalous for an emperor. Then, in 64 CE, a great fire ravaged Rome. While evidence is unclear, rumors spread that Nero had started the blaze to clear land for his grand palace. To shift blame, he targeted a small, obscure sect, the Christians, beginning Rome's first brutal persecution of them. As Nero's tyranny worsened, revolts broke out across the empire. By 68 CE, the Senate declared him a public enemy. Alone and abandoned, Nero committed suicide, ending the Julio-Claudian dynasty. This era revealed a fundamental flaw in Rome's system: there were no clear rules for imperial succession. With each generation, the throne passed not to the most capable, but to those who schemed hardest. The empire had gained immense power, but it was now in the hands of men driven by paranoia, cruelty, and madness. Rome's golden age was truly over. After the chaos of Emperor Nero and the instability of the Year of the Four Emperors, the Roman Empire desperately needed stability. That stability came in the form of a golden era, a period historians would later call the Age of the Five Good Emperors. Starting with Nerva in 96 CE, Rome entered a phase of wise leadership and peaceful succession. Instead of relying on bloodlines, each emperor adopted a capable successor, chosen for merit rather than family. This practice brought Rome nearly a century of prosperity. Trajan, Nerva's adopted son, expanded the empire to its greatest territorial extent. Under his rule, Rome stretched from Britain to the Persian Gulf. His most famous achievement: the conquest of Dacia, modern-day Romania, which brought immense wealth and resources into the empire. Trajan also built magnificent public works, including the iconic Trajan's Forum and Trajan's Column. Next came Hadrian, a philosophical ruler and avid traveler. Unlike Trajan, he focused on consolidation rather than expansion. He visited nearly every province, strengthening borders and improving infrastructure. Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain remains a symbol of Rome's frontier power to this day. Antoninus Pius, his successor, ruled during one of the most peaceful times in Roman history. His reign was marked by legal reforms, economic growth, and a near absence of military conflict. Then came Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor. While admired for his Stoic writings, later compiled as meditations, his reign was plagued by external threats and plagues. He spent most of his rule defending the empire's northern borders from Germanic tribes. Despite these challenges, this era represented the pinnacle of Roman governance: strong administration, stable leadership, thriving economy, and impressive cultural achievements. Roman art, architecture, and law flourished. But with Marcus Aurelius' death in 180 CE, the Golden Age came to an end. His son, Commodus, would mark the beginning of Rome's gradual decline. The age of emperors chosen for wisdom was over. Rome was about to face its most dangerous internal demons. After the golden era of the five good emperors, Rome began to unravel. The year 235 CE marked the assassination of Emperor Alexander Severus, and with it, the empire plunged into a terrifying spiral known as the crisis of the 3rd century. In just 50 years, Rome saw over 26 emperors, most of whom were military generals declared by their own legions. Few died of natural causes. Assassination and betrayal became the norm. The empire became a chessboard of power-hungry commanders fighting for the throne. The crisis wasn't just political. Rome faced economic collapse, rampant inflation, and constant invasions. Germanic tribes breached borders in the north, while the powerful Sassanid Empire struck from the east. Capturing entire legions, plague ravaged the population, trade routes disintegrated, and the once mighty Roman currency became worthless. The denarius, once trusted across the empire, was debased so heavily that it lost all value. Merchants refused to accept it. At one point, the empire fractured. The Gallic Empire broke away in the west, including parts of Gaul, Britain, and Hispania, while the Palmyrene Empire rose in the east under Queen Zenobia, who challenged Rome's control of the eastern provinces. It looked as though the Roman Empire was about to collapse under its own weight, but amidst the chaos, a general named Aurelian emerged. In just a few years, he reconquered the lost provinces and earned the title Restitutor Orbis, restorer of the world. Though Aurelian was eventually assassinated like many before him, his reforms laid the groundwork for Rome's temporary recovery. This century proved one thing: even the mightiest empire can crumble from within, not just from outside enemies. By 284 CE, the Roman Empire was on the brink of collapse. Civil war, barbarian invasions, and economic turmoil had nearly torn it apart. Then came a soldier emperor who would reshape Rome's future, Diocletian. Diocletian realized one man could no longer govern such a vast and chaotic empire. So, he introduced a radical solution: the Tetrarchy, rule by four. The empire would now have two senior emperors, called Augusti, and two junior emperors, called Caesars. He divided the empire into east and west, each with its own ruler and administrative capital. Diocletian ruled the east from Nicomedia, while his co-Augustus, Maximian, ruled the west from Milan. It was the first time Rome was no longer governed from Rome. This system brought temporary stability. For the first time in decades, Rome had a structured succession plan. Military threats were met more quickly, and local governance became more efficient. Diocletian also reformed the military and economy. He fortified borders, expanded the army, and tried to stop inflation with price controls through the infamous Edict on Maximum Prices, though it ultimately failed. But Diocletian's most controversial legacy was his persecution of Christians. Seeing Christianity as a threat to imperial unity, he launched one of the empire's most violent crackdowns, known as the Great Persecution. Despite his immense power, Diocletian did something no emperor before him had ever done. He voluntarily abdicated the throne in 305 CE and retired to a palace in modern-day Croatia. He spent his final years gardening, far from the chaos of Rome. His reforms gave the empire a second wind, but also set the stage for its permanent division and a shift of power eastward, where Constantinople would later rise. In 306 CE, after Diocletian's retirement, the Tetrarchy quickly fell apart. Power struggles erupted again. But from the chaos rose one man who would redefine the Roman world: Constantine the Great. His path to power was marked by blood and ambition. But the turning point came in 312 CE, at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. On the eve of battle, Constantine reportedly had a vision: a cross of light in the sky with the words in this sign, "Conquer." The next day, he marched under the Christian symbol, and won a decisive victory. In 313 CE, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, granting full religious tolerance to Christians. After centuries of persecution, Christianity was now legal and protected. But Constantine didn't stop there. He became deeply involved in church affairs, even convening the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, shaping Christian doctrine and enforcing unity. In 330 CE, he took the bold step of founding a new capital, Constantinople, on the site of ancient Byzantium. Strategically located between Europe and Asia, Constantinople became the new center of Roman power, while the old city of Rome faded in influence. When Constantine died in 337 CE, he was the first Roman emperor to be baptized as a Christian. Under his reign, the Roman Empire had not only been restructured, it had been spiritually transformed. But as the East flourished under Constantinople, the Western Roman Empire continued to weaken. By the late 4th and 5th centuries, waves of barbarian invasions, Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns, shattered Roman control. In 476 CE, the last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. No fanfare, no final battle, the Western Roman Empire simply ceased to exist. But the legacy of Rome, Its laws, language, architecture, and above all, its Christianity, lived on through the Byzantine Empire and the Church. Rome had fallen. But it never truly died.